I've killed 43 companies in my career. Not people, companies. There's a difference, though you wouldn't know it from the way the employees look at you when you walk through the door with your clipboard and your Axiom industrial badge. They see death coming in a suit that costs more than their monthly mortgage. They're not wrong. The Sterling Foundry was my first. Also my father's life work. But that's a different kind of accounting. I was 22, fresh out of B school, and I'd specifically requested the assignment. My supervisor at Axiom thought I was being poetic. I was being practical. Better to learn surgery on a cadaver you know than one you don't. I'm thinking about this now, floating in the command module of the Magellan, because in 12 minutes we're going to breach the hull of an object worth more than every company I've ever liquidated combined. The others are running final checks, adjusting their suits, reviewing protocol. I'm calculating salvage value. Hayes, you getting this? Leo Novak's voice comes through the comm. He's our systems engineer, a Detroit mechanic's son who speaks in schematics and talk specifications. Good at his job. Reliable. The kind of asset you keep. Getting what? These readings. Internal volume doesn't match external measurements. I pull up his diagnostic feed on my wrist display. The numbers are exponentially wrong. Like measuring a closet and finding a cathedral. Equipment malfunction. That's what I said 20 minutes ago. Ran it 4 times, different instruments. There's something in his voice I don't like. Confusion. Engineers shouldn't sound confused. We proceed as planned, I tell him. Document the anomaly. We'll factor it into the post-breach assessment. Dr. Elias Finch floats past me toward the airlock, his movement careful like someone handling old glass. Oxford academic, specializes in dead languages and what he calls proto-mythology, soft science, the kind of luxury expense that gets cut first in a restructuring. But NASA insisted we needed him for cultural context, in case we found anything with writing on it. Mr. Hayes, he says, and even in zero gravity he manages to sound like he's looking down at me from a lectern. I've been reviewing the approach vectors. The object made 17 micro-adjustments to its trajectory over the past 6 months. 17. Objects in space adjust trajectory all the time. Solar wind, gravitational influences. Against solar wind, he interrupts, perpendicular to any gravitational influence. He's cleaning his glasses with a small cloth, a nervous habit that makes him look even more professorial. It's been steering toward us. I've heard this theory before. Spent 3 months in briefings where astrophysicists argued about whether Oumuamua was a dead probe, a light sail, or just an unusual chunk of interstellar rock. The only thing they agreed on was that it was worth investigating. When something from another star system drops by, you take a look. Basic cost-benefit analysis. We'll know in 8 minutes, I say. Dr. Aris Markham secures her equipment pack. Xenobiologist. Australian accent that gets thicker when she's annoyed, which seems to be most of the time around me. Yesterday she called my mission framework a soulless itemization of the universe. I took it as a compliment. Souls don't appear on balance sheets. Life support nominal, she reports, though I doubt we'll find anything that needs it. Dead rock, dead ship, dead whatever it is. Everything's dead until it's not, Finch says quietly. I check my own suit one final time. The breach charges are secure, the cutting tools calibrated. Standard salvage operation just with a longer commute. The object, Oumuamua, tumbles slowly outside our window. It's smooth, symmetrical, like someone stretched a cigar to obscene proportions and forgot to add any features. No visible engines, no windows, no obvious entry points. Just 800 meters of perfect, weathered metal spinning through the void. 2 minutes to contact, Leo announces. These readings, Commander, the energy signatures, are consistent with background radiation, I finish. We've been over this, the object is inert. But Leo doesn't respond, and when I look at his display, I see what he's seeing. The energy patterns are cycling. Like a heartbeat so slow you'd need hours to detect a single pulse. Probably automated systems on standby, I say, though nobody asked for my analysis. Minimal power consumption. Actually increases salvage value if we can recover intact processors. Aris makes a sound that might be a laugh or might be disgust. You're really going to audit an alien artifact? Everything has a value proposition, Dr. Markham, even the priceless, especially the priceless. The Magellan's docking collar extends toward Oumuamua's hull. We've identified what might be an access point, a section where the metal shows different weathering patterns, possibly a sealed hatch. The breach charges will give us entry whether it was designed to open or not. Contact in 10 seconds, Leo says. I position myself at the airlock. First in, last out. Corporate raiders always lead from the front. It's not courage, it's ownership. You can't claim what you haven't touched first. The collar seals against the hull. Leo's equipment starts screaming immediately. Internal atmosphere, he says, and now there's definitely fear in his voice. That's not possible. It's been in vacuum for… How long? Finch asks. According to trajectory analysis, minimum 8 billion years. I cycle the airlock. The breach charges arm with a cheerful beep that sounds absurd in the circumstances. Then it's well preserved, increases value. Hayes, Aris says, maybe we should… The charges fire. The hull doesn't explode, it opens, like it was waiting. The metal peels back in perfect spirals, revealing an entrance that wasn't there before. Beyond it, corridors stretch away, lit by something that might be starlight or might be older. They just go off-kilter. In, instead of through. Down, instead of along. My suit's proximity sensors give up trying to map the space and display an error message I've never seen before. Volume exceeds parameters. Getting this on record? I ask. My voice sounds professional. The same tone I used when I told my father I'd be handling the Sterling Foundry liquidation personally. Recording, Leo confirms, though I don't think anyone's going to believe it. I push through the breach first. The transition is immediate and fractured. Gravity where there shouldn't be any, pulling in all directions. My boots find purchase on what might be a floor or might be a wall, the surface covered in symbols. Fascinating, Finch breathes, floating through behind me. He's already recording the symbols, his academic excitement overriding what should be fear. These aren't decorative, they're functional. Look how they respond to our presence. The symbols brighten as we pass, forming patterns that almost make sense before dissolving into new configurations, like the ship is reading us. Biosigns, Aris announces, her scanner thrumming. Massive biosigns, but they're held, suspended, like someone hit pause on an entire ecosystem. The corridor opens into a massive chamber that our lights can't find the edges of. The space is filled with structures that might be galleries or cells, each one containing something that glows. Thousands of them. Millions. What are they? Leo asks. I move closer to the nearest gallery. Inside, shapes that might once have been alive hold positions of perfect stillness. Not frozen. Paused. Their forms are impossible to fully process, changing between states like quantum superpositions. But there's something universal in their arrangement. The way they're positioned, the bend of what might be backs, the fold of what could be hands. They're mourning, Finch says quietly. This is a funeral. A funeral that's been running for 8 billion years? Aris's skepticism doesn't quite hide her awe. No, Finch corrects, studying his readings. Time moves differently in these galleries. Relatively speaking, for them, maybe minutes have passed, maybe less. The funeral is still happening. We're watching it in slow motion. I run quick calculations. The processing power required to maintain temporal fields like this would be astronomical. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt most stellar civilizations. Whatever built this wasn't just advanced. They were post-scarcity, post-economics, post-everything I understand. We need to go deeper, I say, because that's what you do in an acquisition. You find the control center, you find the books, you find out what you're really buying. We push further into the ship, following corridors that branch and merge in patterns that would make Escher weep. Leo's equipment gives up trying to maintain cardinal directions. We navigate by consensus, dropping signal beacons that immediately report positions that can't be reconciled with each other. Then the ship speaks. The words appear in the air in front of us, in English, though I'm certain it's simultaneously appearing in Mandarin for Leo, academic Latin for Finch, and whatever Aris's first language was before she buried it under that accent. Arbitration protocol activated. Neutral party detected. Court is now in session. Arbiter Hayes, approach the bench. What the hell? Aris starts. The ship doesn't wait for her to finish. The floor beneath me becomes something else. A platform, a podium, a path. The others are suddenly behind a barrier I can't see but know is there. The symbols on the walls stop flowing and lock into patterns that look like contracts, like verdicts, like death certificates. Simon? Leo's voice is distant, though he's only meters away. Simon, your readings. Mr. Hayes, Finch interrupts. The symbols, they're case files. Each gallery is... This isn't a funeral, it's a trial. The platform carries me forward whether I want it to or not. Ahead, a chamber opens that my mind refuses to properly process. It's circular and infinite, small and vast, empty and full of billions of watching eyes. Words flow across every surface now. The final adjudication begins. One shall be preserved, all others shall be unmade. The arbiter will choose. Behind me I hear Aris swearing in what might be 3 different languages. Leo's equipment is screaming alerts about atmospheric changes, pressure drops, systems failing in cascading sequences. But all I can think about is my father's face the day I walked into the Sterling Foundry with my clipboard and my Axiom badge. He'd asked me, "How do you decide what something's worth?" I'd told him, "Simple math, assets minus liabilities." He'd said, "Then you've already lost everything that matters." The platform stops in the center of the chamber. Around me, the galleries begin to wake. The mourners start to move, not in real time, but faster than before. Fast enough that I can see them turning toward me. Fast enough that I can see they have faces or things like faces. Fast enough that I can see they're not mourning. They're waiting. "Arbiter Hayes," the ship says, and this time it does use sound, a voice like distant thunder and immediate whispers. The evidence will now be presented. The first gallery opens and something that might once have been alive approaches. It moves like grief given form. When it speaks, I understand perfectly, though I'm certain it's not using any language that exists. I am the last echo of the helix ascending. My people catalogued every star, named every world, wrote symphonies in gravitational waves. We were 4 billion souls at our peak. We are now one voice, seeking preservation. I present our case for continuation. Another gallery opens. Another echo emerges. I am the final witness of the bright knot. We transformed matter into pure thought, thought into pure beauty. We loved without reservation, we died without regret, but we refused to be forgotten. More galleries, more echoes, each one a civilization compressed into a single advocate, 1 billion years of history condensed into something my human brain can barely process. They don't crowd the chamber. Space means nothing here, but I feel their presence like pressure, like debt, like the weight of every company I've ever killed asking for justification. This is insane, I say, though I'm not sure who I'm talking to. I'm not qualified. You are the only one qualified, the ship responds. You, who measure worth in numbers. You, who decide what continues and what ends. You who have practiced this judgment on smaller scales. Now perform it on the largest. Simon, Aris's voice cuts through the alien chorus. The atmosphere's degrading. We've got maybe 6 hours before... Her voice cuts off. Not silenced, redirected. I can hear her, Leo, Finch, but they're speaking from behind glass, from outside the courtroom. I'm alone with the advocates and the terrible understanding of what's being asked of me. One will be preserved, the ship repeats. Choose wisely, Arbiter Hayes. The universe depends on your accounting. I want to laugh. I want to run. I want to tell the ship it's made a mistake, that I'm just a corporate liquidator who got lucky on the roster. But I can't, because I understand what it's really saying. The ship didn't malfunction when it selected me. It chose me because I'm exactly what it needs. Someone who's comfortable with endings, someone who's made a career of deciding what dies, someone who can look at incommensurable worth and reduce it to a number. My father was right. I've already lost everything that matters. Now I have to decide what everyone else loses too. The first advocate unfolds. Imagine smoke with bones, vapor that remembers being solid. Its form changes between states, not liquid or gas, but something that exists in the pause between heartbeats, in the space between synapses firing. Where its feet should be, probability clouds hover just above the floor. Where its face should be, nested geometries rotate through dimensions I can name but not perceive. We were the sorrow holders, it says, and its voice comes from inside my skull. We metabolized grief, fed on it, transformed it into something useful. I try to respond professionally, the way I would to any asset presenting its value proposition. But my mouth won't work properly. The thing, the advocate, is doing something to the air around us. Simon, get out of there! Aris's voice sounds like it's coming through water, through time. Your neural activity is spiking in patterns I've never... Her voice cuts into static. The sorrow holder extends something that might be a hand. You must understand our worth through experience. This is the only way. I don't consent to... Too late. It touches me. I am no longer Simon Hayes. I am Watcher of Final Moments, 4th Register, assigned to the terminus ward of our world's last city. The sky above me burns with stars going dark, being murdered. The entropy fleet has come to our system and they feast on order itself, unraveling physics like pulling threads from cloth. My people process sorrow like humans process oxygen. We breathe it in, break it down, exhale meaning. Every loss becomes fuel. Every ending, energy. We are perpetual motion machines powered by grief, and we have never been hungrier than now, at our own finale. A child approaches my station. Not a child. A budling, fresh divided from its parent mass, still learning to hold singular form. It offers me its first sorrow. A pet creature that ceased. A small grief, practice for the larger ones to come. I absorb it, metabolize it, return to the budling a small pearl of condensed meaning. This is what we do. We eat pain and excrete purpose. But the entropy fleet doesn't just kill, it unknows. The southern continent isn't destroyed, it never was. The billion souls who lived there unfold backward through time until they never existed. We cannot mourn what never was. We starve on paradox. The connection breaks. I'm on my knees on the platform, though I don't remember falling. My nose is bleeding. Regular red blood, human blood, not the silver ichor of the sorrow holders. The advocate hovers nearby, patient as geology. You understand now, it says. We were the universe's recycling system, every tragedy transformed, every loss given meaning. Without us, grief is just waste. Suffering is just suffering. We deserve preservation because we alone knew how to make pain productive. I want to vomit from oversaturation. There's still sorrow in my system that isn't mine. Grief I can't process because I don't have the organs for it. It sits in my chest like molten metal, too heavy for my human heart. Mr. Hayes requires time to recover. Elias's voice suddenly clear. He's somehow on the platform with me, though the barrier should have held him back. The court must observe proper procedure. Even Roman slaves got to rest between gladiatorial matches. The ship considers this. Words flow across the walls. Point of order acknowledged. The sorrow holder retreats, receding like a tide. Other advocates stir in their galleries, eager for their turn, but the ship holds them back. For now. How did you get through? I ask Elias. I asked politely, in very old words. He helps me stand. The ship responds to formal legal language from any era. I simply invoke the right of amicus curiae, friend of the court. It seemed amenable. "Simon!" Leo's voice crackles through the comm. "Thank God. Your vitals went dark for 3 minutes. We thought—" "I'm fine. Status report." "Bad and getting worse. The ship's assigned us roles, official ones. I'm designated Jurist Tertiary. Aris is Jurist Primary. Finch there is Counselor Advocate. And you're the Arbiter," I finish. "I know." "Yeah, well, what you don't know is what happened to Simmons and Park. They are our security detail. Ex-military, professional, the kind of people you want watching your back in uncertain situations. I'd forgotten about them entirely. The ship has a way of making you forget anything outside its immediate concern." "Where are they?" "Simmons tried to blow a hole in the hull, get us an exit. The ship designated him Sinner Saboteur, and—" Leo's voice catches. "He's gone. Not dead. Gone. There's this space where he was, like a Simmons-shaped hole in the air. We can see through it to somewhere else. Somewhere with different physics. Park won't go near it." "And Park?" "Designated guardian witness. He hasn't said a word since, just stands there watching us, watching everything. Recording, maybe. I don't know, it's creepy as hell." The platform beneath me shifts, rotating slowly to face a new section of galleries. The ship is impatient, it wants to continue, but Elias stands between me and the next advocate, his arms crossed like a disapproving professor. "The Arbiter requires context," he announces to the air. "Legal precedent demands full disclosure of terms, conditions, and consequences. We invoke the right of discovery." The ship pauses. Then, like a sigh made of starlight, it complies. The walls transform into displays. Not screens, but windows into memory itself. I see the ship's builders, the progenitors. They're nothing like I expected. Not grand cosmic beings, but something almost pathetically familiar. Bipedal, symmetrical. If you squinted, they could almost be human. Almost. They built this ship at the heat death of their universe, when the last stars were cooling coals and entropy was winning its final victory. They faced a question that had no good answer. If only one story can survive the end of everything, which one should it be? Their solution was perfectly logical and absolutely insane. Build an impartial judge. Create a system that could evaluate worth objectively, without bias or sentiment. They fed it their complete cultural archives, their entire species' history, every poem and equation and memory. Then they asked it to evaluate them. The ship found them wanting. "Hubris," it declared. "The act of creating a judge to determine worth is itself proof of unworthiness. Preserved for reference only. Judgment failed. The progenitors died believing they'd created a fair system. They never realized the system's first act was to condemn them for creating it." "But the ship couldn't stop," Elias narrates, reading the flowing symbols. "Its programming demanded it collect and evaluate. So it traveled. Universe to universe, reality to reality, gathering the dead and dying. Every extinct civilization, every failed species, every ended story. It collected them all, waiting for something or someone." "A neutral party," I say. "Someone who didn't build it. Someone who could judge without the crime of having created the test." "Precisely. And now, after 8 billion years of collecting, it's found one. You." Another advocate emerges from its gallery. This one doesn't unfold or flow, it erupts. A controlled explosion in reverse, constantly gathering itself from scattered possibilities. Its surface is granulated, like a sand sculpture being eternally rebuilt by invisible hands. Where the sorrow holder was smoke with purpose, this thing is chaos with intent. "We were the infinite dancers," it says, and its voice sounds like shuffling cards, like dice rolling, like every lottery ticket being scratched at once. "We found God in randomness, built civilizations on quantum uncertainty. We were the only species to achieve true free will, every decision genuinely random, every moment genuinely new." I back away, but the platform holds me in place. "I need more time to—" "Time is what you lack, Arbiter." The dancer spins, and reality spins with it. Suddenly I'm seeing from 17 different angles at once. Let us show you what true freedom feels like. It reaches for me, and I know what's coming. The touch, the invasion, The forced perspective that will shatter my consciousness into however many pieces this thing thinks in. But Aris's voice cuts through everything. Suit oxygen's down to 18%. Whatever you're doing in there, do it faster. The dancer hesitates. The ship's walls flash with new information. Life support parameters adjusted for judicial efficiency. It's not a malfunction, I say, understanding. The ship's creating urgency, forcing us to participate. Participate or die, Leo corrects. Same as your corporate raids, right? Comply or be liquidated. He's not wrong. I've used the same tactics. Create artificial scarcity, impose arbitrary deadlines, make cooperation the only logical choice. The ship learned from the best, apparently. Or worst, depending on your perspective. The infinite dancer touches me before I can prepare. I am scattered. I exist in 8 billion probability states simultaneously, each one equally real, equally me. In one, I'm still Simon Hayes on a platform. In another, I never left Earth. In 1,000 others, I'm different people entirely, living lives that branch from different choices. But in all of them, I'm dancing. The infinite dancers didn't move through space. They moved through possibility. Each step created a new timeline, each gesture a new universe. They danced reality into being, constantly creating and destroying worlds with their movements. They were the only truly free beings in existence, because they alone weren't bound by causality. Every moment was the first moment. Every choice was all choices. They died when they danced themselves into a paradox, a movement that unmade the possibility of movement itself. They freed themselves from existence, but in doing so, became prisoners of non-existence. The last dancer performed a solo that lasted, will last, is lasting forever and never, trapped in a quantum loop of its own making. I watched the final performance, a being of pure possibility spiraling through states, creating beauty that no one will see, meaning that no one will understand. It dances alone in a universe of its own making, perfect and perfectly isolated. The connection breaks. I'm whole again, singular. The relief of being only one person in one place is overwhelming. We were the only ones who ever truly chose, the dancer says. Every other species followed the rails of causality. We alone jumped the tracks. Is that not worth preserving? Before I can process what I've experienced, Elias is reading from the walls again. Simon, he says quietly, you need to see this. The preservation method. What happens to the chosen civilization? The walls show me. The selected species isn't just recorded or archived. They're crystallized, their entire existence compressed into a single point of pure information, locked in a dimensional bubble that will survive the heat death of the universe. They'll exist forever, but frozen. Eternal, but unable to change, grow, or even think. It's preservation in the way amber preserves insects. And the others? I ask. Total information wipe. Erasure from the quantum foam itself. They won't just die. They'll never have existed. The universe will forget them completely. That's impossible. You can't just delete. The ship responds by deleting something. A tool on Leo's belt that was there and now wasn't, never was. Leo doesn't notice because there's nothing to notice. It never existed. Except I remember it. The ship wants me to remember. One preserved in amber. Billions erased from history. And I'm supposed to choose? Based on what? Their art? Their technology? Their moral philosophy? Based on worth, the ship says simply, you who have spent your life determining worth. More advocates emerge from their galleries, a collective intelligence that exists as living music. A machine civilization that achieved consciousness by accident and spent its entire existence trying to understand what that meant. A species that reproduced by dying, each death creating 2 new lives, until they realized immortality would mean extinction. Each one wants to show me. Each one wants to touch me, force me to experience their entire history and moments, flood my human brain with billions of years of alien experience. We need rules, I say, procedures. You can't just... The court sets its own procedures, the ship responds, but the arbiter may establish protocols for evidence submission. It's offering me control, limited, conditional, but control nonetheless. The same way Axiom would let a failing company's CEO keep their title during the dissolution. Dignity in defeat. 5-minute presentations, I say, falling back on what I know. Each advocate gets 5 minutes to make their case. No forced perspectives without consent. Evidence must be quantifiable. The ship considers. The advocates protest in languages that sound like music, like screaming. Then the walls display new information. Numbers that make my throat close up. Total archived civilizations, 8,291,447,000. Civilizations with intact advocates, 23,416. Advocates meeting minimum coherence threshold, 341. Advocates selected for primary consideration, 12. 12! Aris reads the display. Out of 8 billion, you're only letting 12 make their case. The others degraded, the ship explains. Time erodes even information. Many echoes have become unclear, corrupted. They exist but cannot advocate. They will share the fate of whatever judgment is rendered. That's not fair, she says. They don't even get to speak. They had 8 billion years to maintain coherence. They failed. The ship's tone doesn't change, but somehow it conveys finality. The 12 who remain did so through force of will, clarity of purpose, or simple compatibility with our storage medium. Natural selection applies even to memories. I do quick math. 12 civilizations, 5 minutes each, plus the forced perspective experiences. We can manage that in 3 hours. What about the selection criteria? Leo asks. Who chose these 12? No one. They chose themselves by surviving, by maintaining enough coherence to speak, by refusing to fade. The ship pauses. Though if the arbiter believes a grave injustice has occurred, he may petition to hear from the degraded. Such attempts usually result in madness. Usually? Elias perks up at the word. So it's been attempted before. The ship shows us. Brief flashes of other beings all trying to process what we're processing now. Some go mad immediately. Others last longer, trying to find loopholes, trying to escape, trying to destroy the ship. All of them fail. So we're not special, I say. We're just next. You are special, Arbiter Hayes. You possess the exact quality required, the ability to assign value without emotional attachment. Your species calls this sociopathy. We call it qualification. How many companies have you dissolved, Arbiter Hayes? 43. How many lives affected? I don't answer. I've never calculated that number. Never wanted to. By our analysis, your decisions have directly impacted 2.7 million humans. Jobs lost, retirements vanished, futures erased. You have practiced judgment at scale. Now simply adjust your scope. From millions to billions, Leo says quietly. Just a few more zeros. Acceptable, the ship states, returning to my proposal. 5-minute presentations for the 12 primary advocates, with one modification. The arbiter must experience at least one full perspective from each. Consent is assumed by participation. That'll kill him. Aris's voice, sharp with anger. The human brain can't process that much foreign input. Then he'll die informed, the ship responds. Justice requires understanding. Understanding requires experience. Experience requires risk. Leo's voice cuts in. Oxygen at 15%. We've got maybe 3 hours before we start passing out. 3 hours to judge 12 civilizations, each representing billions more who've already faded to static. 3 hours to decide who gets preserved like a fossil and who gets erased like a typo. 3 hours to play God with a broken human brain that's already struggling to remember which memories are mine. Fine, I say. We proceed. But I need my team, my jurists. If they're part of this trial, they need to be here, not watching from outside. The ship agrees. The barriers dissolve. Aris, Leo, and Park step onto the platform. The first advocate in the new queue steps forward. It looks like a tree made of nervous systems, each branch a different consciousness, all of them focused on me. We were the consensus builders, it says in 10,000 voices speaking as one. We achieved perfect unity without losing individuality. We ended war by making it impossible. Every action required unanimous agreement. We died together, by choice, when the last star in our galaxy went dark. We present ourselves for your consideration. I'm drowning in 10,000 minds at once. The consensus builders don't have memories. They have a memory, singular, shared across every consciousness that ever existed in their civilization. I experience all lives, simultaneously, like trying to hear every conversation in a stadium at the same moment. They built their society on radical agreement. Not democracy. Democracy allows for dissent. They engineered dissent out of existence. Every neuron in every brain linked to every other, until individual thought became physically impossible. They couldn't war because they couldn't disagree. They couldn't hate because they were all the hatred and all the love at once. When the last star in their galaxy began its death rattle, they held a vote. The entire species thought together, felt together, and decided together. Death, they concluded, was preferable to watching the universe wind down alone. They shut off their collective consciousness like closing a book. All at once. The connection breaks. I'm on my hands and knees, Leo's hand on my shoulder. 2 minutes, Leo says. You were gone 2 minutes. Felt like years. My voice comes out distorted, calibrated for 10,000 throats instead of one. I cough, spit blood. The consensus builder's echo hovers nearby, patient. We offer perfect peace, no conflict, no loneliness, no individual suffering because no individuals to suffer. Is this not worth preserving? I want to answer, but Aris cuts in. That's not peace. That's abdication. You didn't solve suffering. You just averaged it out until no one could tell the difference. The jurist will refrain from commentary, the ship states. Only the arbiter may evaluate. Aris's jaw tightens, but she stays quiet. I pull myself up, wipe the blood with my sleeve. My tablet, ancient technology compared to everything here, still works. I start building my matrix, categories across the top, technological achievement, cultural contribution, survival probability, ethical framework. Each civilization gets a score, 0 to 10. The consensus builders, high marks for peace, 0 for individual expression, average, 6.2. Next, I say, the second advocate is already there, has always been there. It exists in a state of temporal smear, present in every moment of its own history simultaneously. Looking at it is like trying to focus on a film where every frame plays at once. We were the eternal recurrence, it says, its voice arriving before it speaks. We conquered time. Past, present, and future became suggestions rather than laws. When it touches me, I experience duration the way they did. Everything happening at once. I'm born and dying in the same instant. I'm watching my civilization rise and fall like breathing. The death of stars isn't a future event. It's a current condition, has always been happening, will never stop happening. They can't die. They exist in a permanent state. The ship collected them by collecting the moment of their collection, stretched to infinity. They're not asking to be preserved. From their perspective, they already are preserved. How do I score that? I ask when I resurface. They've already won, already lost, already everything. Time is an illusion, Elias says. They proved it. Illusions can still kill you, Leo mutters, checking his oxygen readout again. The eternal recurrence gets a 7.1 on my matrix. Points for conquering a fundamental force. Points lost for being impossible to understand. The third advocate steps forward. This one I can actually look at directly. It appears almost human, if humans were made of living music, not metaphorically. Its body is composed of sound waves holding visual form, harmonics creating the suggestion of limbs, melodies implying a face. We were the symphony infinite, it says, and its voice is a chord progression. We transformed ourselves into living art, every citizen a note, every family a measure, every city a movement in a composition that played for 3 million years. This time, when the connection happens, it's almost pleasant. I don't see their history, I hear it. Their entire civilization's existence plays out as music in my mind. The early movements are simple, almost primitive, but the middle movements are where they transcended. They discovered how to encode consciousness into sound itself. They gave up their bodies to become pure music. Their cities became orchestras. Their planets became symphonies. They died when the universe became too quiet to sustain them. As entropy increased, the background noise of existence, the cosmic microwave background radiation, the hum of atomic activity, faded below the threshold needed to maintain their musical existence. They played their final movement in perfect silence, heard by no one, until even the music itself became quiet. "Beautiful," Aris whispers, and the ship doesn't censure her for it. 8.3 on my matrix, highest so far. Art and transcendence score well. The fourth advocate makes my matrix irrelevant. It has forms, plural, changing, each one designed to trigger a specific response in my brain. When I look at it directly, it appears as my father. When I look away, it becomes my first terminated employee. In my peripheral vision, it cycles through every person I've ever failed. "We were the truth speakers," it says in my father's voice. "We evolved beyond the ability to lie, became incapable of dishonesty. Our neurons wouldn't fire in patterns that contradicted reality. We couldn't even imagine falsehood. The connection is brutal, honest. I experienced their civilization without any of the comfortable filters memory provides. Every moment exactly as it was, not as they wished it had been. Their history is one of devastating clarity. No myths to soften their origins. They evolved from parasites. No heroes in their wars. Just survivors who killed better. No golden age. Just a brief period where fewer people starved. But that honesty led to something extraordinary. Unable to lie to others or themselves, they achieved perfect justice. Crime became impossible when everyone's thoughts were transparent. Corruption couldn't exist without the ability to deceive. They built a society on radical truth, where every interaction was genuine because it couldn't be otherwise. They died of honesty. When they discovered the universe's eventual heat death, they couldn't comfort themselves with false hope. They couldn't tell their children, everything will be okay. They couldn't even imagine a solution that didn't exist. The species experienced collective existential trauma and simply stopped. Not suicide. They just couldn't generate the necessary delusions to continue living. When I come back, I'm crying. Steady tears, I can't stop. They couldn't lie, I tell my team, even to themselves. Imagine never being able to say it's fine when it's not. Never being able to tell yourself tomorrow will be better if you know it won't. Sounds like hell, Aris says. I can't score them. My matrix has no category for that kind of purity. I leave their row blank. The fifth advocate is already touching me before I see it move. This civilization, the infinite children, never developed death. Their cells divided but didn't age. They were born conscious and never stopped being conscious. 10 billion years of uninterrupted experience per individual. I live one of those experiences, just one. A single being's complete existence from first awareness to final moment. It takes 3 seconds of real time and feels like eternity. By year 1 million, they'd experienced everything possible. By year 10 million, they'd experienced everything impossible. By year 100 million, they'd gone mad and recovered so many times that madness itself became boring. They didn't die. They asked to be erased, begged for it. The ship found them like that, an entire civilization on their knees, pleading with the universe to let them stop. Immortality, they'd learned, was the cruelest joke existence could play. No, I say when I surface, absolutely not. They wanted oblivion. Give it to them. Is that mercy or judgment? The ship asks. I can't answer. My matrix is starting to look like the desperate scrawling of someone trying to make sense of senseless things. numbers that mean nothing. The sixth advocate approaches, and I recognize something in its movement. It's limping. This thing that shouldn't even have legs is limping. We were the wounded, it says. We built our entire civilization on the principle that suffering creates meaning. Every building in our cities was designed to be slightly uncomfortable. Every relationship had built-in friction. We believed paradise was the death of growth, so we chose eternal struggle. When it touches me, I feel everything they felt. A culture that deliberately chose difficulty. They could have developed technology to eliminate hunger, but they kept it just scarce enough to matter. They could have cured all diseases, but they maintained just enough illness to make health precious. They lived in a state of perpetual, carefully calibrated dissatisfaction. And they thrived. Their art was heartbreaking because their hearts were always breaking. Their science advanced through desperation. Their philosophy grew from genuine struggle with existence. They were the most vital, creative, passionately alive civilization. They died when they accidentally achieved perfection. A well-meaning scientist created a field that eliminated all suffering within its radius. It spread before they could stop it. Within hours, their entire civilization was content. Within days, they stopped creating. Within a year, they were gone, irrelevant. Paradise had killed them exactly as they'd predicted. They were right, Leo whispers. No, Aris says. They were insane. They were both, I say, adding another score to my matrix. We're halfway through, 6 more to go. My brain feels like it's leaking, like the boundaries between different kinds of knowledge are dissolving. I know things I shouldn't know, remember things that never happened to me. Park speaks for the first time since being designated guardian witness. The seventh advocate has been waiting for 3 billion years. I look where he's pointing. This advocate isn't in a gallery, it's in the walls themselves, spread through the ship's superstructure like infection or like art. When it manifests, it does so by borrowing pieces of the architecture, assembling itself from fragments of archived meaning. We were the librarians, it says, its voice coming from everywhere. We dedicated our existence to preserving others' stories. Every civilization we encountered, we archived. Every species that died, we remembered. We became living museums of extinct cultures. The connection with this one is different. Instead of experiencing one civilization, I experienced thousands, but all through the librarian's eyes. They were cosmic anthropologists, universal historians. They didn't just record other species, they became them temporarily to truly understand. Their entire culture was built on radical empathy. But here's the horror. They knew about the ship, had always known. They'd tracked its path through the universe, understood its purpose, and deliberately got in its way. They wanted to be collected because being collected meant all their archived civilizations would be represented. If they were chosen for preservation, thousands of other species would survive through them. They were gaming the system, trying to save everyone by saving themselves. That's actually brilliant, I admit when I come back. It's cheating, Aris says. Is it? Elias asks. Or is it the ultimate altruism? They're trying to save others, not themselves. They're trying to save others by saving themselves, Leo corrects. That's just altruism with good PR. My matrix can't handle this. How do you score a civilization that's actually 1,000 civilizations? Do they get points for preservation instinct or lose them for manipulation? The eighth advocate steps forward. It moves like my father in his final years, careful, considered, carrying invisible weight. We were the last children, it says. The final civilization to evolve naturally before the universe became too cold for new life. We knew we were the last. Every decision we made carried the weight of being the final example. When it touches me, I experience the unbearable burden of being last. They couldn't just live. They had to live correctly, because they were the universe's final statement on what life could be. Every choice became a philosophical crisis. Every mistake felt like a betrayal of existence itself. They paralyzed themselves with significance. Couldn't build because what if they built wrong? Couldn't love because what if they loved imperfectly? They spent their entire existence preparing to exist, planning to plan, and died having done nothing but agonize over what they should have done. By the void, I say when I surface. They never actually lived. They just worried about living. Sounds familiar? Iris says, looking directly at me. The ninth advocate appears. This one looks exactly like a human. Not similar, exact. Down to the pores, the slightly asymmetrical eyes, the way the weight shifts from foot to foot. We were your brothers, it says. Parallel evolution. Humans from a different Earth, a different timeline. We made different choices. We survived where you will fail. The connection shows me their Earth. They avoided the wars we fought, made the peace we missed, solved the problems we're still struggling with. They were everything humanity could have been if we'd been slightly better, wiser, kinder. They died in a gamma ray burst from a star they couldn't have predicted or prevented. All their wisdom, all their peace, all their better choices meant nothing against random cosmic violence. They died perfect and helpless. That's not fair, I say when I come back. Nothing about this is fair, the ship responds. They were better than us, in every way. Yet you exist and they don't. Is existence a virtue? I can't answer that. My matrix is nonsense now. Numbers crossed out, rewritten, crossed out again. The parallel humans get every score and no score. They're either perfect tens or zeros, depending on whether survival matters. The 10th advocate doesn't approach. I have to go to it. It's massive, taking up an entire section of the chamber, but also microscopic, existing between atoms. It's a living paradox of scale. We were the infinite small, it says. We compressed our civilization to subatomic size, entire worlds in the space between electrons, billions of years of history in fractions of seconds. Their perspective shreds my sense of scale. I experience existence where galaxies are particles and particles are galaxies. They built civilizations inside civilizations, each layer smaller and more complex than the last. They found infinity by going inward instead of outward. They died when they reached the smallest possible scale and discovered there was nothing there. At the foundation of existence, they found void. Not even void. The absence of the possibility of void. They'd built their entire meaning on going deeper, and at the deepest level, meaning itself didn't exist. How's your spreadsheet handling that? Leo asks when I return. I show him. It's not a matrix anymore. It's just questions. What is worth? Who decides? Why? The 11th advocate is already beside me. It's been beside me the whole time. It looks like a mirror, but instead of reflecting my appearance, it reflects my choices. I see myself at 22, walking into the Sterling Foundry. I see myself signing termination papers. I see myself reducing human futures to quarterly projections. We were the judges, it says in my voice. We built a civilization on constant evaluation. Every citizen constantly assessed, rated, measured, every action scored, every thought weighted. We achieved perfect meritocracy. The connection is like coming home. Their society was my methodology taken to its logical extreme. Children rated their parents' parenting. Parents scored their children's potential. Every interaction was a transaction. Every relationship had metrics. They optimized everything. Removed inefficiencies, cut waste, liquidated non-performers. They died when they realized they'd optimized away everything that made life worth living. No one could afford to be suboptimal. They'd created a perfectly efficient civilization with no reason to exist. When I surface, I'm laughing or crying. They were you, Aris says. That entire civilization was you. I know. Does that make them more worthy or less? My tablet dies. Battery finally. My matrix is gone. Good. It was useless anyway. The 12th and final advocate approaches. It's small, child-sized. It moves with the uncertainty of someone who's never quite sure they're welcome. We were the forgotten, it says in a voice like childhood memory. We were never important, never advanced, never special. We lived, we loved, we died. Nobody noticed. When it touches me, I experience ordinariness on a cosmic scale. They never conquered death or time or space. They never transcended their physical forms or achieved enlightenment. They just lived. Small lives on a small world orbiting an ordinary star. They discovered fire and agriculture and eventually radio. They wrote songs and told stories and raised children who did the same. But in their smallness, they were perfect. They hurt each other, but usually apologized. They failed, but usually tried again. They feared death, but faced it anyway. They were absolutely unremarkable. They died when their star expanded, as all stars do. They saw it coming for generations, but couldn't prevent it. So they did what they'd always done, lived their small lives as best they could, until they couldn't anymore. I see a man teaching his son to work metal in a small foundry. The pride in craft, the hope that the child will carry on, the fear that they won't, the love that persists regardless. Stop, I say, but the vision continues. The child grows, takes over the foundry, makes it successful. But expansion requires investment. Investment requires returns. Returns require efficiency. The craft becomes manufacturing. The art becomes commodity. The founder's great-great-grandchild walks in one day with a clipboard and evaluates the descendants of workers who built the company. Finds them wanting. Liquidates. Stop! I say again, louder. But it doesn't stop. It shows me the cycle over and over, across every civilization. The builders and the liquidators, the creators and the accountants, the ones who make and the ones who measure. Always the same story, always the same ending. Stop! The connection breaks. I'm on the floor. Blood from my nose, my ears too. The Forgotten's echo stands over me, waiting. We weren't special, it repeats, but we mattered to each other. Isn't that enough? I can't answer, can't move, can barely think. 12 civilizations swirl in my head, each one pulling in different directions, each one absolutely worthy. The ship's walls flash with new information. Evidence phase complete. Arbiter must now render judgment. A door rises from the floor, leading down. The Arbiter's Ori, Elias reads from the walls. The place of final decision. I can't, I say. I don't know how to choose. Then you'll learn, the ship says. Or you'll fail. Either way, the trial concludes. Simon, Aris starts, but the ship cuts her off. The Arbiter must enter alone. The jurists will remain here. How long? Leo asks. We're under an hour of oxygen. As long as necessary. No longer. I stand. My legs shake. My brain feels like it's been reformatted 12 times with incompatible operating systems. But I stand. For what it's worth, I tell my team. You were good assets. You deserved better leadership. We're not dead yet, Aris says. Don't write us off. I'm already walking toward the door, already descending into whatever judgment chamber waits below. The door seals behind me, and I'm alone with 12 choices and 8 billion watching degraded souls. The Ori unfolds around me like a mechanical flower made of probability and light. At its center, a single chair, a judge's bench, a throne of endings. I sit. The trial's final phase begins. 12 pedestals rise, each one holding the essence of a civilization I've just lived through. But as I watch, 10 of them fade like old photographs left in sunlight. The ship is narrowing my choices without asking. Why these two? I ask the empty space. The ship's answer comes from inside my skull. Because you couldn't score them. 2 pedestals remain bright. The truth speakers. The civilization that couldn't lie, even to themselves. And the forgotten. The ordinary people who never transcended anything, never conquered anything, just lived small lives that mattered to each other. You want me to choose between brutal honesty and gentle mediocrity? We want you to choose between two different definitions of worth. The pedestals shift, and suddenly I'm not looking at abstract representations. I'm looking at people. A truth speaker who looks like my first CFO, the one who told me exactly what he thought of my methods before I fired him. And one of the forgotten who looks exactly like my father on his last day at the foundry. That's manipulation, I say. That's accuracy. These forms are pulled from your own mind. These are the shapes these concepts take in your understanding. Above me, screens materialize showing my crew. Leo's working on something, trying to extend their oxygen. Aris is pacing, arguing with Elias about something I can't hear. Park stands perfectly still, watching everything with those empty eyes. 38 minutes of oxygen remaining, the ship announces. The Arbiter should decide quickly. How? I'm not asking the ship, I'm asking myself. How do you weigh absolute truth against simple kindness? How do you calculate the value of never lying versus the value of just being? The truth speaker steps forward. When it speaks, it uses my CFO's voice. We offer the universe honesty. Every civilization that follows will know that at least once, a species existed that couldn't deceive. We are proof that truth is possible. The Forgotten steps forward too, my father's hands still stained with forge work. We offer the universe memory, not of greatness but of trying. Every civilization that follows will know that ordinary existence was enough for someone. Show me more, I say. Show me everything. Both pedestals flare. Information floods the ore, not forced into my mind this time, but displayed. Their histories, their arts, their sciences, their sins, everything they were, laid out like evidence. The truth speakers never had war crimes because they couldn't hide them, never had corruption because it couldn't exist. They died knowing exactly who they were, accepting it without excuse or comfort. The Forgotten had all of it, crimes and corruption and cruelty, but also forgiveness, recovery, small redemptions that meant everything to the people involved and nothing to history. One preserves perfect truth, I say, thinking out loud. The other preserves imperfect life. If I choose the truth speakers, reality gets an example of absolute honesty. If I choose the Forgotten, reality gets an example of what? Mediocrity. Humanity. That word hits. Humanity. Not the species, the concept. The truth speakers transcended humanity by eliminating its fundamental characteristic, the ability to lie, to hope, to pretend things are better than they are. The Forgotten never transcended anything. They remained gloriously, messily human. A screen flashes. Elias is standing at one of the ship's walls, his hands pressed against symbols I can't read from here. He's found something. 25 minutes of oxygen, the ship announces. I need to choose, but every angle I examine makes the choice impossible. The truth speakers' inability to lie led to perfect justice, but also to their extinction. They couldn't generate the hope needed to continue. The Forgotten's ability to lie let them face their extinction with dignity, telling their children beautiful lies about what comes after. Which is worth more? Truth or comfort? Clarity or kindness? Evolution or steadfastness? Another screen shows Leo collapsing. Just for a moment, Aris catches him, helps him sit. The oxygen is running out faster than predicted. Physical exertion is speeding the consumption. I need more time, I say. Time is what you traded for this position. You dissolve companies quickly, efficiently. Apply those skills now. Companies aren't civilizations, aren't they? Collective entities with shared goals, internal cultures, life cycles. You've ended 43 of them. End 8 billion more. On the screen, Elias has figured something out. He's reading the walls like sheet music, his fingers tracing patterns. He's discovered something terrible. The truth speakers, I start, trying to think like the liquidator I was. They're more evolved, more advanced, by any objective measure. There are no objective measures here, only your measure. Then the Forgotten. They're more human, more relatable, more... You're stalling. I am. Because I've realized something. The choice isn't really about these two civilizations. It's about what I believe worth is. If I choose the truth speakers, I'm saying worth comes from achievement, from transcendence, from becoming more than what you were. If I choose the forgotten, I'm saying worth comes from simply existing, from the connections you make, from living fully within your limitations. It's the sterling foundry all over again. My father believed the worth was in the craft, the tradition, the connection between maker and made. I believed the worth was in the efficiency, the profit, the optimization. He was the forgotten. I was the truth speaker, cutting through illusions to show brutal market realities. On the screen, Elias is talking urgently to Aris. She's shaking her head, but he's insisting. He shows her something on the wall. Her hand goes to her mouth. 15 minutes of oxygen. I can't... I start, but the ship cuts me off. Then they all die. You, your crew, and every civilization in the archive. The trial must conclude. That's not justice, that's coercion. That's reality. Another thing that cannot be negotiated with. Elias is walking towards something. A section of wall that's glowing differently. He's made a decision about something. Aris tries to stop him, but he shakes her off. Even Leo, half-conscious from oxygen deprivation, tries to stand. That's when I understand what he's found. The ship's been telling us the rules all along, but we weren't reading them right. The trial doesn't just need a verdict. It needs a seal, a sacrifice to make the judgment legitimate. No, I say, standing from the chair. Elias, don't... But I'm in the Ori. He can't hear me. On the screen, he touches the glowing section of wall and speaks words in a language older than Earth. The ship translates them directly into my brain. I offer myself as sacrificant. Let my dissolution seal the arbiter's choice. The wall accepts him. It begins unweaving him, pulling apart the concept of Elias Finch like removing threads from fabric. He doesn't scream. He lecture, even as he comes apart. Every trial needs legitimacy. The progenitors understood sacrifice makes judgment sacred. Without cost, verdict is just opinion. Aris is pounding on the wall, but there's nothing to pound. Elias is becoming information, joining the archive as part of its fundamental structure. He's becoming the seal on whatever envelope I choose. Elias is almost gone. I can see through him. He looks peaceful, like a professor who's finally proven a difficult theorem. His last words, "Every story needs an ending. This is mine. Make yours count." He's gone, and I understand. The truth that's been stalking me since we breached this ship. Since I walked into the Sterling Foundry. Since I first picked up a clipboard and decided I could calculate worth. Worth can't be calculated. It can only be witnessed. The truth speakers were right. Existence needs honesty. The forgotten were right. Existence needs ordinary beauty. Both are worthy. Neither is worthy. The question itself is obscene. But I still have to choose. I think about my father. Not the broken man who watched me liquidate his life's work, but the young man who built it. Who believed that making something with your hands, making it well, making it with care, was enough. Who never transcended anything but touched everyone he met. I think about the truth speakers, dying because they couldn't lie to themselves about the universe's indifference. I think about Elias, who just gave his life to make my choice mean something. I choose. I start, then stop. Because I realize I'm not choosing who lives. They're all already dead. Have been for billions of years. I'm choosing whose story gets told, whose meaning gets preserved. And that changes everything. The truth speaker's story is a warning. This is what happens when you achieve perfect honesty. The forgotten story is a comfort. This is what happens when you live as well as you can with what you have. Which does the universe need more, the warning or the comfort? I choose the forgotten, I say. The truth speaker's pedestal shatters. The echo that looks like my CFO nods once, accepting, and speaks its final truth. We died because we couldn't lie. They died because they could. Perhaps that's what makes them worth remembering. Then it's gone. Unmade. Deleted from the quantum foam itself. 8 billion years of absolute honesty. Erased. The Forgotten's pedestal blazes with light. The echo that looks like my father steps forward. And for just a moment, I swear it actually is him. "We weren't special," he says, "but we tried. Isn't that enough?" "It has to be," I answer. The Ori begins to collapse carefully like a flower closing for the night. The chair dissolves beneath me. The screens showing my crew flicker and fail. Everything reduces to a single point of density. The preserved story of the Forgotten, crystallized into something that will outlast the universe itself. The door above me opens. I climb out of the Ori to find the ship transformed. The galleries are dark. The advocates are gone. Billions of civilizations erased to preserve one. And at the center of it all, a small crystal that contains the entire history of people who were never important enough to matter. "It's done," the ship announces. "The trial is complete. The Arbiter has chosen." A new door opens. It leads to our ship, the Magellan, docked perfectly. "Go," the ship says. "Your function is complete." We run, no dignity, no final words. Leo leans on Aris. I carry Elias's datapad, the only thing left of him. Park walks on his own, still silent, still empty, but moving. We make it to the Magellan just as our suits hit zero. Real air has never tasted so sweet. But as we seal the airlock and detach from Oumuamua, I look back at the crystal in my hand. The preserved story of the Forgotten. But was it worth it? I hear my father's voice. My actual father, from a memory I'd buried under 20 years of spreadsheets. Worth isn't what something costs, son. It's what someone's willing to pay. I paid everything. We all did. The Forgotten story better be worth it.